In this episode, we're counting down 5 people who ignored every warning and paid the ultimate price for their stupidity. From a social media obsessed photographer who thought he could outsmart a tiger to a college student who decided to play tag with a rabid raccoon. But first, we begin in Thailand, where a man's quest for viral fame puts him face to face with one of nature's most efficient killers. It was March 15, 2016, and the humid afternoon air hung heavy over a private wildlife sanctuary in northern Thailand, where the scent of exotic animals mixed with the diesel fumes from tour buses that arrived hourly. The facility catered to tourists seeking close encounters with big cat, operating in the gray area between conservation and entertainment that defined much of Thailand's wildlife tourism industry. Alex Morrison was a 24-year-old amateur wildlife photographer from Portland, Oregon, whose Instagram account had become an obsession that governed every decision he made. His 847 followers had grown accustomed to increasingly dangerous stunts as Alex chased the dopamine hit of likes and comments. Co-workers at the coffee shop where he worked part-time described him as someone who would interrupt conversations to check his phone and had once called in sick to reshoot a hiking photo that hadn't performed well online. His trip to Southeast Asia was funded entirely by credit cards and justified as an investment in his social media presence. Alex had researched facilities that allowed direct contact with tigers, dismissing warnings from travel forums as overcautious fear-mongering from people who didn't understand his artistic vision. The facility's safety briefing was delivered by a tired-looking Thai guide who emphasized that visitors must follow staff instructions at all times and never approach the tiger enclosures without supervision. Alex listened with visible impatience, already planning his shot and calculating optimal lighting angles, when the guide explained that tigers were unpredictable and potentially lethal even in controlled environments. Alex dismissed the warnings as liability theater designed to scare tourists into paying for expensive guided experiences. During the supervised photo session, Alex noticed that one of the tiger enclosures had a feeding area separated from the main pen by a chain link barrier. A large male tiger, approximately 400 pounds of muscle and predatory instinct, paced behind the fence as staff prepared his afternoon meal. Alex saw an opportunity for the kind of dramatic close-up that would set his content apart from typical tourist photos. The tiger, for his part, saw nothing of particular interest yet. Tigers are apex predators, capable of taking down prey several times their own weight through a combination of stealth, power, and precision. An adult male can weigh between 400 and 660 pounds, with canine teeth reaching up to 3 inches in length. Their bite force exceeds 1,000 pounds per square inch, strong enough to crush bone and sever spinal cords instantly. Tigers are ambush hunters by nature. While staff members were distracted with other tourists, the ones following instructions, Alex slipped away from the group and approached the feeding enclosure. He had purchased raw chicken from the sanctuary's gift shop, planning to offer it through the fence and get close enough for a dramatic shot. The tiger immediately focused on the food, its yellow eyes tracking Alex's movements as he extended the chicken through the chain link barrier. The tiger moved closer to the fence, drawn by the scent of meat, and Alex leaned forward to get the perfect angle. In his excitement, he pressed his face against the chain link, positioning himself just inches from the tiger's massive skull. From the tiger's perspective, a man had approached its enclosure at feeding time, carrying raw meat, and then placed his face directly next to it. This was, objectively, a confusing set of choices. The tiger swiped at the chicken, claws catching Alex's hand and dragging upward across his face and neck as he recoiled. The impact tore several deep gashes from jaw to temple, narrowly missing his left eye. Alex stumbled backward, dropping the chicken as blood poured from the wound. The tiger, now in a heightened state of food-driven arousal, slammed its full weight against the fence. The chain link held. It didn't need to fail. Alex had already done the difficult work himself. Alex lost his balance and fell backward, landing hard on the concrete pathway. The tiger continued striking at the fence, driving its forelimb through the chain link openings in short, powerful raking swipes. A second strike caught his right shoulder, claws tearing through his shirt and opening deep lacerations across his back. Alex rolled away from the fence, screaming as staff members rushed toward the commotion. The sanctuary's emergency protocols kicked in immediately. Staff used air horns and water hoses to drive the tiger back from the fence, while others attended to Alex's injuries. His face was a mask of blood, the claw marks running from jaw to temple. The shoulder wounds were deeper, requiring immediate pressure to control the bleeding. Alex was airlifted to a hospital in Chiang Mai, where surgeons spent 6 hours cleaning and closing the wounds. The prognosis was cautiously optimistic. The facial lacerations were deep, but had missed the eye and major vessels. The shoulder wounds were more concerning. Tiger claws carried dense colonies of bacteria, and staff at the sanctuary noted the tiger had been fed raw meat earlier that day, a detail that would prove relevant. 3 days after the attack, Alex developed a fever. By day 5, it had climbed past 104 degrees. The infection had tracked along the shoulder wound and into surrounding tissue, and the antibiotics weren't holding it. His parents, reached by the American consulate, flew from Portland and arrived on day 6. Alex died on the morning of day 8 from septic shock. He was 24. The sanctuary implemented stricter supervision protocols and banned personal photography near animal enclosures. His Instagram account, never updated again, still shows 847 followers. While Alex Morrison's fatal pursuit of the perfect tiger shot ended in a hospital in Chiang Mai, a thrill seeker in Australia would soon discover that crocodile-infested waters don't care about your swimming confidence. It was April 22nd, 2017. And the oppressive heat of the Australian wet season hung over the remote waterways of the Northern Territory, where the muddy brown water moved slowly between mangrove-lined banks that concealed one of nature's most patient predators. Warning signs in multiple languages dotted the shoreline, their sun-faded text describing recent crocodile attacks and the futility of swimming in these waters. Ben Crawford was a 30-year-old personal trainer from Sydney whose social media presence was built around extreme fitness challenges and death-defying stunts. His YouTube channel had gained a modest following through videos of him performing dangerous workouts in precarious locations, a brand identity that required him to continuously escalate. Friends described him as someone who dismissed safety advice as cowardice, disguised as wisdom, which is a very specific worldview to hold when you are planning to swim in a river full of large reptiles. Ben had driven 12 hours from Darwin specifically to film content at this remote river system, drawn by online reports of large crocodile populations and the area's reputation as one of Australia's most dangerous waterways. He had researched the location obsessively, not for safety information, but for the most dramatic angles and the highest likelihood of crocodile encounters. He got exactly what he came for. Local Aboriginal guides at a nearby fishing camp had warned Ben about the river's reputation when he stopped for directions. They explained that the waterway was home to numerous saltwater crocodiles, including several large males responsible for multiple attacks on livestock and at least 2 human fatalities in recent years. Ben thanked them for the information, while privately dismissing their concerns as exaggerated local folklore designed to keep tourists away from prime fishing spots. The guides, who had lived alongside this river their entire lives, were presumably unaware of how much Ben knew about it after a few hours of online research. The riverbend Ben had selected was particularly notorious among locals. The deep pool was marked by slide marks on the muddy banks and the complete absence of water birds that typically populated similar areas. 2 details that, to anyone paying attention, communicated something important about the local food chain. Ben waded into the shallows, planning to swim across the 50-foot wide channel. Saltwater crocodiles are the largest living reptiles, with mature males commonly exceeding 16 feet in length and weighing over 1,000 pounds. They are ambush predators of extraordinary patience, capable of remaining motionless for hours while monitoring potential prey. Their bite force is among the most powerful in the animal kingdom, measuring over 3,700 pounds per square inch, strong enough to crush a water buffalo's skull. Ben had waded approximately 15 feet from shore when the water erupted around him. A saltwater crocodile, estimated at 14 to 16 feet in length, launched itself from the muddy bottom with explosive force. The animal's jaws, open to 75 degrees, clamped down on Ben's right leg, just above the knee. The initial bite fractured his femur, the crushing pressure collapsing bone and muscle beneath jaws designed to overpower large prey. The crocodile immediately initiated its death roll, spinning through the murky water with Ben trapped in its jaws. The violent rotation disoriented Ben completely, his world becoming a chaos of brown water, pain, and the crushing pressure around his leg. Each revolution tore muscle and ligament, the crocodile's teeth grinding against bone and tissue. Ben's attempts to surface for air were futile as the death roll continued, the crocodile's massive weight and momentum keeping him submerged. The spinning motion caused massive internal damage as his body was whipped through the water. Blood dispersed through the current in a way that could have drawn the attention of other crocodiles nearby. After what seemed like an eternity, but lasted perhaps 30 seconds, the crocodile released its grip and repositioned, clamping down on Ben's torso just below his ribcage. The second bite punctured his lung and crushed several ribs, the massive teeth penetrating deep into his chest cavity. Ben's scream was cut short as water filled his punctured lung, his body going into shock from blood loss and trauma. The crocodile began dragging Ben into deeper water. Crocodiles typically drown large prey before consuming it, often dragging carcasses into submerged areas where they may be cached. Ben's consciousness faded as his body was pulled beneath the surface, and the water gradually returned to its deceptively calm state. A search and rescue operation was launched when Ben failed to return to his accommodation that evening. His abandoned vehicle was found at the river access point. Ben's body was never recovered, despite extensive searching of the river system. The Northern Territory government used the incident to reinforce warnings about crocodile-infested waterways, though officials noted that Ben had ignored multiple posted warnings and had deliberately entered water known to be extremely dangerous. Additional signage was installed. It joined the signs that had already been there, which Ben had also ignored. His YouTube channel was deleted by his family shortly after his death. While Ben Crawford's pursuit of extreme content ended in the muddy depths of an Australian river, a tourist in America would soon learn that feeding bears from your car window is an invitation to disaster. It was July 18, 2015, and the late afternoon sun filtered through the towering pines of Yellowstone National Park, where the summer tourist season had brought thousands of visitors eager to photograph the park's famous wildlife. The parking area near Dunraven Pass was crowded with vehicles as families hoped to catch glimpses of the black bears and grizzlies that frequently foraged in the area's berry-rich meadow. The park had thoughtfully provided a mandatory safety orientation for all visitors. Clara Martinez had skipped it. Clara Martinez was a 27-year-old marketing coordinator from Phoenix, Arizona, whose vacation planning consisted primarily of researching the most Instagram-worthy locations rather than understanding the environments she intended to visit. She had skipped the orientation specifically to get to scenic locations before other tourists, which, in retrospect, was an interesting set of priorities. Clara had spent the morning driving through the park's interior roads, frustrated by the distance between herself and the animals she encountered. Other tourists photographed elk and bison from the required 25-yard minimum distance without complaint. Clara found this approach insufficiently dramatic. When she spotted a large grizzly bear foraging near the tree line, she saw an opportunity for the kind of close-up shot that would generate serious social media engagement, and made a series of decisions that would also generate serious consequences. The bear, a mature female grizzly weighing approximately 300 to 350 pounds, had been feeding on huckleberries in a meadow adjacent to the parking area. Park rangers had been monitoring the animal throughout the week, noting her increasing comfort around human activity and her tendency to investigate vehicles for food sources. Clara had signed a form at the park entrance acknowledging that feeding wildlife was both illegal and dangerous. She then drove to the meadow and prepared to feed the wildlife. She parked approximately 30 feet from the bear, rolled down her passenger window, and began making clicking sounds while waving a granola bar out the window. The bear looked up from her foraging, immediately focusing on the scent of processed food. From the bear's perspective, a person had parked nearby and was waving food at her. This was not a confusing situation. Grizzly bears possess an extraordinary sense of smell, capable of detecting food sources from over a mile away. An adult female can weigh between 290 and 400 pounds, with powerful limbs capable of propelling them at speeds exceeding 30 miles per hour. Their claws can reach up to 4 inches in length, and their bite force exceeds 1,200 pounds per square inch. The bear approached with deliberate steps, her massive head swaying as she tested the air. Clara held the granola bar further outside the window, attempting to coax the bear closer for a better shot. The bear rose on her hind legs, placed her front paws on the car's doorframe, and brought her massive head level with Clara's window. The bear's weight caused the car door to creak ominously, her claws leaving deep gouges in the paint as she repositioned for a better angle at the food. When Clara tried to pull the granola bar back inside the vehicle, the bear lunged toward the open window, pressing her head and shoulders against the door. The bear's claws raked across Clara's chest and arms as she struggled, tearing through her shirt and opening deep lacerations across her torso. Clara screamed and tried to push the bear away. The bear, weighing approximately 350 pounds, was not pushed away. Clara managed to open the driver's side door and attempted to escape, but the bear's weight pressed against the door doorframe, limiting her movement and trapping her against the passenger seat. The animal's massive paw struck Clara across the side of her head with devastating force, fracturing her skull and sending her glasses flying. The blow caused immediate severe trauma, her vision darkening as she slumped against the seat. The bear bit down on Clara's left shoulder and neck, powerful jaws crushing through muscle and bone. The bite severed her carotid artery, and blood began pouring from the wound at an alarming rate. Clara's attempts to scream were reduced to gurgling sounds as the bear shook her violently, the way a predator dispatches prey. Other tourists in the parking area began honking their horns and shouting, but the commotion came too late. The bear had dragged Clara partially out of the vehicle through the driver's side door, her body limp and unresponsive. By the time park rangers arrived with bear spray and firearms, Clara had lost consciousness from massive blood loss and traumatic injuries. Emergency medical personnel arrived within 8 minutes of the initial 911 call, but Clara was pronounced dead at the scene. The cause of death was determined to be exsanguination from the severed carotid artery, combined with catastrophic head trauma and crush injuries to her chest and neck. Park authorities euthanized the bear after determining that her escalating food conditioning posed an unacceptable risk to visitor safety. Clara, who had created that food conditioning through deliberate and illegal feeding, had paid the ultimate price. The incident prompted Yellowstone to implement stricter enforcement of wildlife interaction regulation and increase the penalties for feeding animals. While Clara Martinez's granola bar gambit left her permanently gone, a backpacker in India would soon discover that trying to pet a venomous snake makes for a very short photography session. It was September 14, 2014, and the humid air of Kerala's Western Ghats hung heavy with the scent of rain-soaked earth and decomposing vegetation, where the dense forest canopy filtered the afternoon light into dappled patterns on the jungle floor. The remote trekking trail wound through prime habitat for some of India's most dangerous reptiles, including the species responsible for thousands of deaths annually across the subcontinent. Ryan Venko was a 22-year-old backpacker from Vancouver, Canada, whose gap-year journey through Southeast Asia had been documented extensively on his travel blog. His posts consistently emphasized his willingness to take risks that other travelers avoided, and he had built a modest online following by photographing himself in increasingly dangerous situations. Friends who had traveled with Ryan described him as someone who treated local warnings as challenges rather than legitimate safety concerns. Ryan had hired a local guide for the 3-day trek through the Periyar Wildlife Sanctuary, an experienced tracker named Ravi who knew the forest, its wildlife, and exactly how dangerous both could be. Ryan had made it clear from the outset that he wasn't interested in what he called tourist-friendly experiences. Ravi had warned him specifically about the high concentration of venomous snakes that became active during the monsoon season. Ryan had nodded, and then, on the second day, wandered off alone anyway. He was following a game trail that led to a small clearing when he spotted a large snake coiled beneath a fallen log approximately 10 feet away. The snake's distinctive hood and striking black and yellow banding immediately identified it as a king cobra, one of the world's most dangerous venomous species. Ryan identified it as a content opportunity, rather than backing away slowly, as Ravi would have advised had Ryan not left Ravi behind. Ryan approached the snake with his camera, planning to capture close-up shots of what he appears to have assumed was a docile, sun-basking reptile. King cobras are the world's longest venomous snakes, capable of reaching lengths exceeding 18 feet and weighing up to 20 pounds. They can deliver large volumes of neurotoxic venom capable of killing a human without treatment, with severe cases leading to respiratory failure within 1 to several hours without ventilatory support. Ryan had approached to within 6 feet of the coiled snake when it began displaying defensive behavior. The cobra raised its head and spread its distinctive hood, a warning signal recognizable to anyone with even passing familiarity with cobras, which Ryan did not appear to have. The snake's forked tongue flicked rapidly as it assessed the threat. Instead of retreating, Ryan continued moving closer, holding his camera at arm's length to capture what he believed would be an award-winning wildlife photograph. When he extended his free hand toward the snake, apparently intending to touch its hood, the cobra struck. The snake's fangs penetrated Ryan's right hand just below his knuckles, injecting a large volume of neurotoxic venom into the tissue of his hand. The bite lasted a fraction of a second. Ryan jerked his hand back, staring at the 2 small puncture wounds already beginning to swell and discolor. The cobra struck a second time as he stumbled backward, catching his forearm before withdrawing beneath the log. The snake had done what it needed to do and returned to its log. Ryan turned and ran blindly through the forest. Within minutes, he began experiencing the first symptoms of envenomation. His vision blurred, his speech slurred, Muscle weakness spread through his limbs as the neurotoxin began its work, making it increasingly difficult to stay upright as he crashed through undergrowth, searching for the guide he had deliberately left behind. Ryan collapsed approximately 200 yards from the bite site as his respiratory system began to shut down. He managed to activate the emergency beacon on his GPS device before losing consciousness. Piece of technology he had apparently packed alongside his camera, but not his judgment. Ravi found Ryan's body 3 hours later, guided by the GPS signal. A helicopter evacuation was attempted, but Ryan was pronounced dead before reaching medical facilities. The cause of death was respiratory failure, secondary to king cobra envenomation. The remote location made survival impossible, even with immediate intervention, which Ryan had ensured would not be available by separating from his guide in a forest he did not know, to photograph a snake he did not understand, for a blog that had a modest following. While Ryan Holloway's pursuit of non-tourist friendly experiences ended permanently in the forests of India, a college student in Canada would soon learn that urban wildlife can be just as deadly as their jungle counterparts. It was October 28, 2018, and the crisp autumn air carried the scent of fallen leaves through a suburban neighborhood in Mississauga, Ontario, where the early evening darkness provided cover for the nocturnal animals that had adapted to urban life. It was, in other words, a perfectly ordinary autumn evening in Ontario, right up until Emma Rodriguez decided to play tag with a raccoon. Emma was a 19-year-old college student at the University of Toronto, whose entire social media identity was built around what she called urban wildlife encounters. Her TikTok account featured videos of her hand-feeding squirrels, approaching stray cats in alleyways, and generally treating the urban animal kingdom as a petting zoo that simply hadn't been officially designated as one yet. Her friends described her as someone who had never encountered a creature she wouldn't try to befriend. Emma was walking home from a Halloween party when she spotted a large raccoon rummaging through an overturned garbage can in a residential driveway. The raccoon was focused on its foraging, and likely would have remained focused on its foraging had Emma continued walking home. Instead, Emma decided this was an opportunity, approaching the raccoon and engaging it in what she described to her followers as playing tag. Emma began making clicking sounds and moving closer. The raccoon looked up from its foraging with the expression of an animal that had not agreed to any of this. Its body language indicated stress and defensive posturing, which Emma interpreted as curiosity. She continued approaching, now within 8 feet of an increasingly agitated wild animal that was also, though Emma did not yet know this, rabid. Raccoons are highly intelligent and adaptable mammals that typically weigh between 15 and 30 pounds, though exceptionally large males may exceed that range. They have powerful forelimbs, equipped with dexterous paws and sharp claws, designed for climbing and manipulating objects. Urban raccoons are often larger and more aggressive than their rural counterparts due to abundant food sources and reduced fear of humans. The raccoon had backed against a fence corner, trapped by Emma's approach and the barriers around it. Emma reached out her hand to touch the animal. The raccoon, presented with a confined space, a looming human, and an outstretched hand, made the only reasonable decision available to it and lunged. The raccoon's claws raked 4 parallel gashes from Emma's left temple to her jaw, the wounds immediately beginning to bleed heavily. Emma screamed and stumbled backward, but the raccoon pressed its attack, jumping onto her chest and clawing at her arms and torso. The animal's momentum knocked Emma off balance, sending her crashing backward onto the concrete driveway. On the ground, Emma tried to push the raccoon away. It bit her left hand, teeth puncturing through the skin between her thumb and index finger and grinding against the small bones in her hand. Emma's attempts to shake it loose only intensified its grip. The raccoon then released her hand and opened additional lacerations across her forehead and cheek. Emma rolled onto her side, trying to protect her head, but the raccoon continued lunging, scratching her arms and shoulders until Emma's screams finally drew enough attention from nearby residents, who turned on porch lights and shouted to cause the animal to retreat into the shadows. Emergency services arrived within minutes, finding Emma conscious and bleeding heavily from multiple wounds across her face, neck, arms, and hands. She was transported to a trauma center, received over 150 stitches, and was strongly advised to begin post-exposure prophylaxis for rabies. Emma refused the treatment, citing a fear of needles and insisting the raccoon couldn't have been diseased. Despite repeated warnings from medical staff about the fatal nature of untreated rabies, she signed a waiver declining the vaccine series. Animal control set traps in the area. The raccoon was captured 2 days later and tested positive for rabies, confirming that Emma's urban wildlife encounter had been with a diseased animal that she had cornered against a fence. Public health officials immediately contacted Emma, urging her to begin treatment. She refused again. 26 days after the attack, Emma developed tingling sensations around her bite wounds, followed by fever and anxiety. By the time she reached the hospital, clinical symptoms of rabies had begun. Once symptoms appear, rabies is nearly 100% fatal. Emma died 6 days later from rabies encephalitis on November 29, 2018. She was 19 years old. Her TikTok account was made private by her family. The videos serving as a tragic reminder that wild animals are not pets and can carry deadly diseases. Thanks for watching. Want to see more stories of people who thought they were smarter than nature? Click on your screen now.